Hi, my name is CO Moon, editor of settlenews.com. Today's session will be about thought forms, the artificial beings. So let's get started. All right, so thought forms, the artificial beings, for our Subtle Energy Conference 2024. So let's talk about the concept of thought forms. Thought forms have been discussed by many esoteric spiritual authors over the past decades. The idea itself is rooted in the concept of subtle energy, which is an energy so subtle as to be imperceptible to the physical senses. And for those of you that are thinking, well, I can feel subtle energy with my hands, or I can see it with my eyes, what we're actually talking about in this situation is not the physical senses, but the spiritual senses. So you're able to see or feel or experience this through those spiritual senses, which of course connect to the physical body. That itself is a topic for another day. So just sticking with thought forms, I'd also like to mention that on my right-hand side, I have a list of examples of some of the esoteric thought authors that do talk about thought forms. They either touch on it or they go into it in great detail. Master Choa Kok Sui's book on pranic psychotherapy is one example. Charlotte Anderson's Thought Power, the Key to Successful Materialization. The Etheric Double in the Astral Body by A.E. Powell, Thought Forms by Annie Besant and Charles Leadbeater, and The Powers of Thought by Omram. So these are just a few examples, though there are so many other authors. So what is a thought form? Thought forms are created by you every time you have a thought, which then takes a shape or form. They are subtle and imperceptible to the physical senses, which I previously mentioned. Another term for thought form that has been used by esoteric spiritual authors is thought entity. So thought forms or thought entities appear as different shapes or forms in different colors, along with different levels of intensity or vibrational levels, along with different levels of density and sizes. And so here on my right, I have an image from the book Thought Forms of different colors and what they represent based on Annie Besant and Charles Leadbeater's experiment on thought forms. So they are self-described, So let's go a little more in detail on thought forms. Are thought forms actually beings? According to A.E. Powell, in his book, The Astral Body and Other Astral Phenomena, thought form is a term he deems not fully accurate. So he feels a better term would be artificial beings because for the time they exist, he says they do so as a kind of living creature. And he also noted that they are often mistaken by untrained psychics or clairvoyants for real living entities. Okay? Furthermore, he says that they can be composed of mental matter or more often than not, both astral and mental matter. What does this mean? This is a type of matter that he describes being in the astral and mental realms. So let's say we too, as authors like Powell note, have astral and mental subtle energy bodies. And so these thought forms live on the levels of these bodies. But back to thought forms, some thought forms can be negative, like anger and jealousy. Others can be positive, like love, kindness, empathy, mercy. How they appear in the subtle energy world will depend on the intention of the thought, as well as the clarity of the intention of the thought, and or the emotion behind the thought. How strong is it? How powerful is it? How clear is it? Okay, and so on my right, we have an example of a thought form of selfish ambition from the book Thought Forms. Okay. It's also worth mentioning that there are groups of thought forms. So there are also, they can be quite big due to a type of way of thinking that a large group of people share. One example of this would be the political landscape in a specific country, or the religious beliefs of groups of people. Okay. According to one author, Master Chogyok Sui, firm belief is the emotional gunpowder, whether the thought created is positive or negative. So again, the thought, how strong it is on the subtle energy world will depend on the strength of that thought, the intention behind it, the emotion, all of those things. So if I were to wrap that all up, I would say that in a nutshell, based on certain esoteric spiritual authors, such as the ones I previously mentioned, your thoughts produce thought forms or thought entities, or more accurately, artificial beings. Some thought forms have a short lifespan. Others are born of very strong emotions or repetition. Repetition being something like, I'll never be successful, I'll never have enough money, or I will be successful, I will always have enough money, I am blessed with abundance and prosperity. And so these repetitive thoughts can create thought entities that have a longer lifespan because they're being nurtured by the author of the thoughts. You keep feeding them the same thoughts, the same emotions, all of these things. And again, on my right, we have an example of a thought form that is watchful and angry jealousy from the book Thought Forms. So what can we do to perhaps manage our those thought forms, or maybe keep them more on the positive side? Based on Master Chogyok Sui's book, Practical Psychic Self-Defense for Home and Office, your subtle energy bodies, such as your astral and mental bodies, are really comfortable places for thought forms to hang out. So are your chakras. And another word for chakras is subtle energy centers. Okay. So what is a person to do? Well, you can start by paying attention to your thoughts, which can also help steer your choice of words and actions towards yourself and other people. Paying attention to what you read, watch, and listen to, along with the quantity of your consumption, can have an impact as well. So thoughts come from all sorts of places. And you're not only impacted by your own thoughts, but those of other individuals and also group thoughts. Meditation tends to help a lot. There's one meditation by Master Chogyok Sui called the Planetary Meditation for Peace, which we have on subtlenews.com, completely free for people to try. All the information is there if you want to test it out, see how you feel after doing this meditation a few times. And also, I think practices like yoga, breathing techniques, just things that get you in a space where you can really ground yourself and then be with your thoughts and recognize what those thoughts are, can also help. So these are just some suggestions. As I mentioned, certain meditations help purify your subtle energy bodies and your chakras, also known as subtle energy centers, to a certain extent of negative thoughts. One example of this is the planetary meditation by Master Chogyok Sui, which I previously mentioned. But there are also some mantras that can help with this. One of them is the Om mantra, the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra also, along with certain prayers, for example, depending on your religious beliefs or your cultural background. So there are different things you can try based on what you feel comfortable with. But of course, if I were to leave you with one thing to consider, it would be thoughtful, or perhaps better, be mindful of your thoughts. We hope you enjoyed this session, and we hope you enjoy the conference.